In the age of infinite information, how do we find the truth? Specifically, when it comes to the Book of Enoch, you are caught in a crossfire of digital lies. One video screams it's the ultimate secret, the next dismisses it as a medieval forgery. You're told it was banned by a secret council, then told it was never even considered. This isn't a search for knowledge, it's a war against confusion. But what if the most dangerous lie isn't about what the Book of Enoch is, but about why it was deemed too dangerous to be included in the Bible in the first place? This is not another opinion piece. This is an intelligence briefing. We will take the scalpel of scholarship to dissect the most popular internet lies surrounding this ancient text. We will not be guessing. We will be citing manuscript evidence from the Dead Sea Scrolls and untangling centuries of historical debate, because hidden beneath the layers of modern fiction and clickbait is a terrifying core of truth. A truth about the first apocalypse, not an end-of-the-world event, but a violent unveiling that exposed the true enemy of humanity. This video is your debriefing. We will arm you with the facts so you can fight the war for your own understanding. The investigation begins now. Let's begin our investigation by declassifying the most fundamental lie, the one that forms the foundation for nearly all other misinformation. The idea that the Book of Enoch is a single cohesive volume that was discovered and then deliberately suppressed. The popular narrative, sold to us on countless thumbnails and late-night documentaries, is that of a lone, forbidden text, a single smoking gun. This is a lie. The first rule of any serious investigation is to examine the evidence, not the rumor. And the manuscript evidence, the hard archaeological facts from places like the Qumran caves, tells a radically different story. The truth is, there is no single Book of Enoch from antiquity. What we call First Enoch is not one book. It is a library. It is an anthology, a collection of at least 5 separate, distinct books, written by different authors in different languages over a period of several centuries. Think of it not as a single novel, but as a dossier compiled over 200 years. The oldest and most infamous part, the Book of the Watchers, dates back to around 300 BC. Other sections, like the Similitudes of Enoch and the Astronomical Book, were written later, each with its own unique focus and style. These were not originally part of a single volume. They were individual scrolls, independent works, which were only later gathered and curated together by scribes, likely because they all centered around the legendary figure of Enoch. Why is this distinction so critical? Because understanding this is not just academic nitpicking, it is fundamental. It dismantles the entire premise of a simple conspiracy. You cannot ban a single book that never existed as a single book in the first place. This reveals that we are not dealing with a simple story, but with an evolving, multi-generational tradition of forbidden knowledge. It was a movement, a school of thought that wrestled for centuries with the biggest questions: the origin of evil, the nature of angels, and the blueprint of the coming apocalypse. Acknowledging this complexity is the first step toward uncovering the real, far more sophisticated reason why this powerful library of ideas was ultimately left outside the gates of the canonical Bible. With the first lie dismantled, we can now address the second, more explosive allegation: that the Book of Enoch was once a part of the original Bible and was then deliberately and maliciously removed by a shadowy council, most often cited as the Council of Nicaea or Laodicea. This is the cornerstone of the modern conspiracy theory. It paints a picture of corrupt church fathers actively censoring scripture to control the masses. It's a compelling story. It's also historically inaccurate. To debunk this, we must operate like a true investigator and establish a clear timeline of events. The truth is, the Book of Enoch was never formally in the Old Testament canon to be removed from it. The collection of books that would become the Hebrew Bible, the Old Testament, was largely settled by Jewish tradition long before the rise of Christianity. While different Jewish sects had slightly different collections, and Enoch was immensely popular and revered, especially among groups like the Essenes at Qumran, it was never elevated to the same sacred status as the Law of Moses, the Torah, or the prophets, the Nevi'im, by the mainstream rabbinic authorities who ultimately shaped Judaism. So where does the confusion come from? It comes from a misunderstanding of how the Christian canon was formed. The early Christians inherited the Hebrew scriptures. For the first few centuries, there was debate about which of the in-between texts written during the 400 years of silence should be included. Some early church fathers did indeed admire Enoch and quote it, but a formal, universally accepted Christian Bible did not exist yet. When the church councils finally did meet to formalize the canon, they weren't engaging in a conspiracy to remove Enoch. They were making a decision about whether to add it for the first time. They ultimately chose not to, siding with the mainstream Jewish tradition that had long held it as important but not divinely inspired scripture. The exception, of course, was the ancient church in Ethiopia, which operated on a separate historical track and maintained its own unique and ancient canon that always included Enoch. The idea of a clandestine meeting where bishops voted to tear a page out of everyone's Bible is a modern myth. The real question isn't why did they remove it, but why did they ultimately decide not to include it? And the answer to that question reveals the true, forbidden nature of its contents. Now that we have cleared away the debris of internet lies, we can begin the real work of this investigation, uncovering the forbidden truths that the Book of Enoch actually contains. And the first truth is so profound, it forces us to redefine the very word at the heart of this mystery. Apocalypse. When we hear apocalypse, our minds immediately jump to the end of the world, fire, brimstone, the final judgment as depicted in the Book of Revelation. We have been conditioned to see it as a future event, the final chapter in the story of mankind. This is the accepted definition, but it is not the original one. The word apocalypsis is Greek. It does not mean end of the world. Its literal etymological meaning is an uncovering, a lifting of the veil, a revelation. An apocalypse is not an event that ends the world. It is an event that reveals the true nature of the world. It is the moment the curtain is pulled back, exposing the hidden machinery of the cosmos and the secret war being waged just beyond our sight. This is the first forbidden truth. The event described in the Book of Enoch was not a failed prophecy about the end of the world. It was a historical account of the first apocalypse. It was the moment the veil between heaven and earth was violently torn open by the Watchers. Their descent was not just a fall, it was an unveiling. It revealed to humanity the existence of other dimensions, other beings, and a conflict that had been raging long before Adam. This single shift in perspective changes everything. It reframes the story from a simple myth into a report on a breach of cosmic security. The Great Flood was not the apocalypse. It was the desperate, catastrophic cleanup after the apocalypse. The Book of Revelation is not the first story of its kind. It is the prophecy of the final unveiling, the closing chapter of a war that was first revealed to Enoch. Understanding this is the key to the entire file. The ancient war was not about ending the world, but about revealing its hidden masters. And that revelation was so dangerous, so paradigm-shifting, that the gatekeepers of the Bible chose to leave it veiled. To prove the case that the Enochian event was the first apocalypse, a violent unveiling, we must examine the primary evidence file, the oldest section of the text, known as the Book of the Watchers. When you read this section not as a myth, but as an intelligence dossier, the details align perfectly with the definition of a planned, strategic incursion. This is not a story of temptation and weakness. It is a meticulous record of a conspiracy. The file opens by identifying the perpetrators. Enoch doesn't use vague terms. He names their rank, Watchers, and their commanding officer, Semjaza. He specifies the number of insurgents, 200, and the precise location of their staging ground, Mount Hermon. This level of detail is characteristic of a historical account, not a fable. Fables are timeless and placeless. This event is anchored in geography and hierarchy. The dossier then records the motive. It wasn't a slow, moral decay. It was a singular, consuming desire for the daughters of men. But the most crucial piece of intelligence is the method. Semjaza, the leader, expresses fear of being the sole party responsible for a great sin. The response from his co-conspirators is not emotional, but contractual. They formalize their rebellion with a binding oath, a herem or curse, sealing their pact. This is the language of a military coup or a mutiny, not a simple moral failing. This act of descending from their heavenly station, as Enoch describes it, constitutes the apocalypsis itself. It was the physical act of tearing the veil. Before this moment, humanity lived with an understanding of one reality. After this moment, a second, more powerful reality intruded. The Watchers brought with them not just their presence, but their knowledge, their technology, and their biology. They unveiled to humanity a universe far more complex and dangerous than they had ever known. Reading the Book of the Watchers in this light transforms the narrative. It's no longer a strange prequel to the flood story in the Bible. It is the declassified field report of the first documented contact between humanity and a rogue faction of extra-dimensional beings. Their goal was not merely indulgence, it was colonization, first genetically, then ideologically. And this initial report lays the groundwork for understanding the true, terrifying nature of their offspring. One of the most sensationalized and misunderstood pieces of evidence in this entire investigation is the nature of the Nephilim. The common internet narrative, fueled by mistranslations and a hunger for the spectacular, paints them simply as colossal humanoids, giants. This image of oversized men, while intimidating, is a dangerous oversimplification. It is a myth that sanitizes the true horror of their existence and obscures their central role in the first apocalypse. To debunk this, we must perform our own linguistic archaeology, just as a true scholar would. The term Nephilim appears in Genesis 6, but its origin is not a word for size. It comes from the Hebrew root naphal, which means to fall. They were not the giants, they were more accurately the fallen ones. This name doesn't describe their height, It describes their parentage and their corrupted nature. The Book of Enoch provides the critical context that the Bible omits. It confirms their immense size, but reveals this as a symptom of their condition, not the condition itself. Their true nature was not gigantism, it was that of a hybrid, an abomination. They were a fusion of two distinct natures, the immortal, spiritual essence of their Watcher fathers and the mortal, physical flesh of their human mothers. They were a biological impossibility, a living violation of God's created order. This hybrid nature is the key to understanding their destructive rampage. They were born with the insatiable, limitless desire of their angelic fathers, trapped within a physical form that required constant fuel. Their monstrous hunger wasn't a character flaw. It was a biological imperative. They were a failed experiment, a genetic dead end whose existence was defined by a single, terrifying drive: consumption. By reducing the Nephilim to just giants, the popular myth misses the entire point. Their terror wasn't in their size, but in their unnaturalness. They were a walking, breathing testament to the fact that the very source code of life on Earth had been hacked. They were the physical evidence of the apocalypse, the proof that the veil between worlds had not just been lifted, but had been violently torn down, leaving a monstrous and hungry scar upon the face of creation. Here we arrive at the core of the forbidden intelligence, the section of the Enochian file that is so disturbing, so operationally significant, that its exclusion from the canonical Bible becomes tragically understandable. This is the truth that directly connects the ancient apocalypse to the spiritual warfare of the present day. This is the uncensored origin story of demons. The common theological explanation for demons is often vague, lumping them in with the original fallen angels who rebelled with Lucifer. But this creates a logical inconsistency. If the fallen angels were bound in chains in darkness, as the New Testament confirms, who are these legions of spirits actively tormenting humanity on earth? The Book of Enoch provides the specific, horrifying answer. It is a truth born from the hybrid nature of the Nephilim. When judgment came and the giants were slain, their massive physical bodies perished. But what happened to their spirits? As beings born of both immortal angel and mortal human, their spirits belonged to neither realm. They could not ascend to heaven, for they were tainted with flesh. They could not pass into the quiet rest of the human dead, for they were infused with immortal spirit. Enoch's testimony records their chilling fate. God declares that these disembodied spirits of the giants are now condemned to wander the earth. They are to be called evil spirits, and the earth itself is to be their eternal dwelling and their prison. This is the forbidden truth. The demons that tempt, torment, and possess are not the original watchers. They are the disembodied malignant ghosts of their monstrous offspring. They are a race of metaphysical orphans, forever trapped between worlds, burning with the insatiable hunger they had in the flesh and a furious resentment for the humanity they can never truly be a part of. This intelligence changes everything about our understanding of spiritual warfare. It reveals that our enemy is not just a distant fallen angel, but a vast and desperate army of earthbound spirits whose primary tactical objective is to interfere with, corrupt, and ultimately inhabit human beings. They are the psychic shrapnel, the radioactive fallout from that first apocalypse, and their ongoing campaign of terror is the most tangible legacy of the Watcher's ancient crime. Now, a skeptic might argue that everything we've discussed Watchers, Nephilim, the origin of demons, is just a fascinating piece of ancient Jewish folklore. A weird story, as some scholars might say, but ultimately irrelevant to the Christian faith. This argument collapses under the weight of one undeniable piece of evidence found not in the Dead Sea Scrolls, but within the pages of your own Bible. The ultimate validation of Enoch's authority comes from the New Testament itself, specifically from the Epistle of Jude, the half-brother of Jesus Christ. His short letter is a blistering warning against the very same kind of rebellious, corrupting forces that Enoch described. And in the middle of this warning, Jude does something extraordinary. He doesn't just allude to Enoch, he quotes him directly and gives him the full authority of a true prophet. In Jude verses 14 and 15 he writes, "It was also about these that Enoch, the seventh from Adam, prophesied, saying, Behold, the Lord comes with 10,000s of his holy ones to execute judgment on all." This is not a casual reference. Analyze the language like a scholar. Jude doesn't say, as an old story says. He says Enoch prophesied. In the biblical world, prophecy is not a literary genre. It is a direct message from God. By using this specific term, Jude, writing under the inspiration of the Holy Spirit, is officially endorsing Enoch's prophetic credentials. Furthermore, he quotes from a section of the Book of Enoch, specifically 1 Enoch Shambum 1:9, that deals with the final apocalypse, the ultimate judgment of the ungodly. This act is a powerful bridge. It connects the ancient history of the Watcher's fall with the future prophecy of the Lord's return, presenting it as one seamless, unified narrative of cosmic justice. The presence of this quote in the New Testament is the smoking gun of our investigation. It proves that for the early church, Enoch was not some obscure, heretical figure. He was a recognized prophet whose words carried divine weight. It proves that his testimony about the ancient world and the coming judgment was considered a crucial piece of the puzzle. The question, therefore, is not whether the early Christians took Enoch seriously. The evidence is clear that they did. The real question is why, centuries later, we were taught not to. In the online war for truth, no piece of misinformation about the Book of Enoch is more pervasive or more passionately defended than the claims surrounding the Ethiopian Bible. The argument is seductive and simple. The Ethiopian Orthodox Church has a canon that includes Enoch. They are one of the oldest Christian traditions. Therefore, their Bible must be the original, and all other Bibles are censored versions. This is a powerful narrative of preservation against suppression. Unfortunately, it is a myth built on a misunderstanding of history. To debunk this, we must separate tradition from textual evidence. The Christian tradition in Ethiopia is indeed ancient and venerable, dating back to the 4th century. We respect this history deeply. However, the claim that their physical Bible manuscripts are the oldest is demonstrably false. The oldest complete manuscripts of the Ethiopian canon, containing all of its 81 to 88 books, date to the 14th and 15th centuries AD, long after our earliest manuscripts of the Greek New Testament or the Hebrew Old Testament. The ancient Garima Gospels, while incredibly old, 4th, 6th century, are just that, Gospels, not a complete biblical canon. So why did they include Enoch when others did not? The answer lies in their unique historical development, not in a grand conspiracy. As explained by scholars like our expert witness, Wesley Huffs, Early Christianity in Ethiopia developed in relative isolation from the theological debates raging in the Roman and Greek-speaking worlds. When missionaries brought a wide array of sacred and respected literature to the kingdom of Aksum, the Ethiopian church appears to have been non-discretionary. They didn't engage in the same protracted debates about canonization. They simply accepted the entire library of respected texts they received, including works like Enoch and Jubilees, which were popular at the time. Their canon is not more original, it is more inclusive. It represents a snapshot of the broad range of literature that was circulating in the early centuries. To claim it is the one true, uncensored Bible is to ignore the distinct and equally ancient traditions of Judaism and the rest of Christendom that never considered Enoch to be divinely inspired scripture on par with the Torah. Their unique Bible is a testament to their incredible history of preservation, but it is not the master key that proves every other tradition wrong. It is one vital, fascinating piece of a much larger, more complicated puzzle. Having debunked the most common myths, we can now venture into the territory that most online experts are afraid to touch: the actual mind-bending content of Enoch's apocalyptic visions. This is where we move beyond historical debate and into the heart of the forbidden revelation. The Book of Enoch is not just a story about fallen angels, it is a travelogue of a journey into the very command center of the cosmos. Enoch's testimony is a first-person account of being taken, physically or spiritually, beyond the confines of our reality. He describes a guided tour through the layers of heaven, a concept that would later become central to mystical traditions. This is not the gentle, cloud-filled heaven of popular imagination. This is a place of terrifying raw power and absolute order. He speaks of traversing through celestial gates, each guarded by powerful angelic beings. He witnesses the storehouses of creation, the chambers from which snow, hail, and dew are dispensed. He sees the foundations of the cosmos, the pillars that hold up the sky. This is a vision of a universe that is not a random accident, but a complex, meticulously engineered structure administered by legions of celestial beings. The climax of this journey is his arrival at the throne of God, a scene we have already glimpsed. But the details warrant a deeper dive. He describes the beings surrounding the throne: the fiery seraphim and the many-eyed cherubim, not as plump infants with harps, but as formidable, alien-like guardians of a holiness so pure it is lethal to unprepared mortals. Their ceaseless cry of "Holy, holy, holy" is not a gentle hymn. It is the resonating frequency of reality itself. Why is this journey so important to the narrative of the first apocalypse? Because it establishes the ultimate contrast. While the Watchers were orchestrating chaos and rebellion on Earth, Enoch was being shown the source of all divine order and power. While humanity was learning the arts of war and deception, Enoch was learning the physics of creation. This vision is the ultimate counter-narrative. It proves that the chaos on Earth was a temporary, localized insurgency, an affront to an infinitely greater and more powerful cosmic government. It is from this place of absolute authority that the coming judgment would be issued. Enoch's journey to the heavens was not merely a sightseeing tour. It was a briefing in the war room of the cosmos. Having witnessed the seat of all power, he was then given a detailed dossier on the specific sentences to be carried out against the leaders of the rebellion. This section of the Book of Enoch is crucial because it reveals a system of divine justice that is far more intricate and personal than a simple, sweeping condemnation. This isn't just punishment, it's a series of precision strikes. The file on Azazel, the primary tech transfer agent of the rebellion, is particularly detailed. His sentence is not just to be cast out, it is to be a multi-stage process of total isolation and future destruction. First, he is to be bound and imprisoned in a specific named location, the desert of Dudael, a place of complete darkness. This geographical specificity reinforces the historical nature of the account. Second, he is symbolically made to bear the weight of all the sin he introduced to the world, a dark foreshadowing of the scapegoat ritual that would later be given to Israel. Finally, his imprisonment is temporary. It is a holding pattern until the final day of the great judgment, the ultimate apocalypse, where he will be cast into the eternal fire. The sentence for Semjaza and his co-conspirators is equally specific, but carries a different, more psychological form of torment. Their judgment is delayed. They are first condemned to watch the horrifying spectacle of their own monstrous children, the Nephilim, slaughtering each other. They must witness the complete and violent failure of their genetic experiment. Only after suffering this profound personal loss are they to be bound. Their prison is also specified, not in some otherworldly hell, but in the valleys of the earth. This is a critical piece of intelligence. It suggests that these powerful, rebellious beings are imprisoned here within the very fabric of our world, held in unseen chains until the end of the age. Their sentence of 70 generations also introduces a prophetic timeline, a countdown clock ticking towards their final disposition. This detailed dossier reveals a God who is not an abstract, distant judge, but a precise and strategic military commander. Each sentence is tailored to the crime, combining physical containment, psychological suffering, and a final, ultimate punishment. It is a terrifying glimpse into a system of justice that operates on a cosmic scale, where the consequences of high treason are absolute and inescapable. Within the vast revelations given to Enoch, tucked away in what scholars call the astronomical book, lies one of the most intellectually explosive and historically contentious secrets of the entire text. A detailed description of a perfect 364-day solar calendar. This might seem like a dry, technical detail, but to the ancient world, the control of time was the control of worship, and this forbidden calendar represents a direct challenge to the religious systems that would follow. Enoch presents this calendar not as a human invention, but as a divine revelation. He is shown the perfect, unalterable mechanics of the cosmos. The sun, he is told, governs a year that consists of exactly 364 days. This year is perfectly divisible by 7, meaning that festivals and Sabbaths would fall on the exact same day of the week, every single year, forever. It is a system of perfect mathematical harmony, reflecting the unchanging order of its creator. The year is divided into 4 equal seasons of 91 days each, 13 weeks, with the solstices and equinoxes acting as the great markers of the year. Why is this a forbidden truth? Because it stands in stark contrast to the lunisolar calendar that was eventually adopted by mainstream rabbinic Judaism and is still used to calculate the dates of festivals like Passover and Yom Kippur today. That calendar, based on the cycles of the moon, is shorter and requires the regular addition of leap months to keep it aligned with the seasons. It is, by its very nature, imperfect and requires human intervention to maintain. The Book of Enoch issues a stern warning against abandoning the perfect 364-day solar calendar. It prophesies a time when men will err regarding the days, mixing up the seasons and holy days, and will forget the years. This was a major point of contention for the Qumran community, who found the Dead Sea Scrolls. They vehemently adhered to Enoch's solar calendar and saw the temple authorities in Jerusalem, who used a lunar calendar, as apostates. This isn't just a debate about numbers, it's a battle for the very rhythm of worship. The Enochian calendar represents a divine, unchanging order, while the lunar calendar represents a more fluid, human-managed system. The suppression of this solar calendar tradition can be seen as a move by later religious authorities to consolidate control, to make themselves the necessary interpreters of sacred time. By revealing this, Enoch hands us a key to an ancient schism, a forbidden timeline that challenges the very foundation of how and when we are meant to honor God. If the existence of a forbidden calendar was a challenge to religious authority, the next section of Enoch's testimony is a direct challenge to our entire understanding of messianic prophecy. Contained within the section scholars call the Book of Parables, or the Similitudes of Enoch, is a series of stunningly clear and detailed prophecies about a divine figure who is given a very specific and later very famous title, the Son of Man. For centuries, many scholars believed this title was an invention of the New Testament, a term Jesus used to describe himself. The discovery and validation of the Book of Enoch shattered that assumption. Here, written centuries before the birth of Christ, is a rich and developed theology of this very figure. This isn't a vague, shadowy Messiah. Enoch's vision is startlingly specific. He sees this Son of Man existing with the head of days, a title for God the Father. Before the sun and stars were even created, he is a pre-existent, eternal being. This figure is described as the embodiment of righteousness, and his primary role is that of the ultimate judge. On the day of the great judgment, it is this Son of Man who will sit on a throne of glory, topple the kings and mighty ones of the earth from their seats, and judge the secrets of all hearts. The parallels to the language used by Jesus in the Gospels are impossible to ignore. When Jesus speaks of the Son of Man coming in glory to judge the nations, Matthew 25, he is not introducing a new concept. He is stepping into a role that had already been revealed in detail to Enoch. Enoch's vision describes this figure as a light to the Gentiles and a source of hope for the troubled, the one before whom all who dwell on earth will fall down and worship. This is a forbidden truth of the highest order. It suggests that the full identity and mission of the Messiah were revealed in incredible detail long before the prophecies of Isaiah or Daniel. It provides a powerful, extra-biblical confirmation of the divine nature and judicial authority of Christ. The gatekeepers of the canon, in sidelining Enoch, effectively buried one of the oldest and most explicit blueprints of the Messiah. They left the world with the prophecies, but hid the original field manual that explained his identity in such breathtaking detail. For the spiritual archaeologist, this is like finding the original architectural plans for a cathedral whose builders were long thought to be anonymous. Beyond the prophecies and judgments, the Book of Enoch offers us something equally astonishing: a guided tour of the cosmos from a pre-scientific perspective. In the astronomical book and other travel sections, Enoch doesn't just see spiritual realities, he is shown the very mechanics of creation. the source code of the physical world. This is not the abstract cosmology of modern physics, but a living, breathing universe administered by angelic forces, a machine of perfect order and divine purpose. Enoch is taken to the ends of the earth, where the dome of the sky meets the land. There he is shown the celestial portals. He describes 12 gates in the east and 12 in the west, through which the sun, moon, and stars rise and set with perfect, unwavering regularity. This is a geocentric model, yes, but its purpose is not scientific accuracy in our modern sense. Its purpose is to reveal a universe of absolute, dependable order, a stark contrast to the chaos humanity was experiencing. The sun does not wander. It follows a precise, divinely mandated track. He is then shown the storehouses of the heavens. He describes the chambers from which the winds are released, each with its own purpose, some for blessing, some for judgment. He sees the treasuries of the hail, the mist, the frost, and the rain. This vision demystifies the natural world, removing it from the realm of chaotic pagan gods and placing it under the singular sovereign control of the Creator. Storms and seasons are not random acts. They are part of a complex, administered system. This detailed cosmology served a critical function for its ancient readers, and it serves an important function in our investigation. It establishes a baseline reality of perfect order. The sun obeys, the winds obey, the stars obey. Against this backdrop of cosmic obedience, the rebellion of the Watchers and of mankind becomes even more heinous and unnatural. Their sin is not just a moral failure, it is a deliberate act of cosmic treason. A violent attempt to introduce chaos into a system designed for perfect harmony. For the modern spiritual archaeologist, Enoch's cosmology is a powerful metaphorical blueprint. It reveals a universe where nothing is random, where every element has a purpose, and where the laws of the spirit are as real and binding as the laws of physics. It is the schematic of a reality that the Watchers tried and failed to overwrite. As Enoch's cosmic tour reaches its conclusion, he is shown one final cryptic piece of the puzzle, a revelation that connects his visions to some of the most mysterious and powerful creatures mentioned in the entire Bible, Leviathan and Behemoth. In the canonical book of Job, these two beasts are presented as the pinnacle of God's creative power, untamable monsters that demonstrate his absolute sovereignty over creation. But the Book of Enoch gives them an additional eschatological role, a purpose tied directly to the coming apocalypse. Enoch's testimony describes these two primordial beings being created on the fifth day, but then being separated. Leviathan, the female creature, is assigned to dwell in the abysses of the ocean, while Behemoth, the male, is placed in a vast, hidden desert to the east of the Garden of Eden. They are not simply wandering beasts, they are being held in reserve. Their ultimate purpose, as revealed to Enoch, is for the day of judgment. He is told that on that great day these two monsters shall be food for the righteous and the elect. This is a stunning and bizarre piece of prophetic imagery. It suggests that at the great messianic banquet that concludes the final apocalypse, the righteous will feast upon the very symbols of untamable chaos. It is a powerful metaphor for the ultimate victory of divine order. The forces of primordial chaos which once threatened creation will be utterly subdued and literally consumed, becoming nourishment for the redeemed. This revelation does two things. First, it provides a deeper, symbolic context for the creatures described in the Book of Job, lifting them from mere examples of God's power to key players in the end times drama. Second, it reinforces the sheer scale and strangeness of Enoch's visions. This is not a sanitized, human-centric theology. It is a raw, wild, and deeply ancient worldview, filled with imagery that is both terrifying and majestic. It reminds us that the cosmic war is not just about angels and men. It involves the entire scope of creation, from the highest heavens to the deepest abysses of the sea, and includes forces and beings that stretch the very limits of our imagination. This vision of primordial monsters serves as a final, powerful reminder that the reality Enoch unveiled is far grander and far stranger than the simplified versions we have been told. This brings us to the most pressing question in this entire investigation, a question that echoes in the comments of every truth seeker who encounters this story. If the Book of Enoch is so ancient, so influential, and contains such critical intelligence on the nature of our spiritual war, why isn't it in my Bible? Why was this file sealed? To answer this, we must move from the celestial courts to the human ones. The process of compiling the books of the Bible, known as canonization, was a long and complex one, carried out by councils of religious leaders centuries after the time of Christ. These were men of faith, but they were also men facing practical challenges. They sought to create a collection of texts that was cohesive, theologically consistent, and clear for a growing, often uneducated, global church. And therein lies the problem. The testimony of Enoch is not simple, it is not clean. It complicates the narrative of sin in a way that can be deeply unsettling. The official redacted story is straightforward. Man sinned, man is responsible, and man needs a savior. It is a powerful and true narrative. But Enoch's testimony adds a disruptive layer. It presents humanity not just as perpetrators, but also as victims. Victims of a celestial conspiracy. Victims of a technological and biological contamination from a higher order of beings. It suggests that the evil within us is not entirely of our own making, but is also the legacy of an ancient alien invasion. This is a wild, untamable truth. It raises difficult questions about free will and divine sovereignty. It introduces a cast of characters, watcher angels, Nephilim, disembodied spirits, that vastly complicates the simple story of the fall. For the gatekeepers of the canon, a text this volatile, this explosive, may have been seen as a liability. It was easier to seal the file, to archive the testimony of this star witness, and to present the world with a simpler, more manageable case file. The decision may not have been born of malice, but of a desire for control and clarity. But in redacting the record, they left humanity fighting a war without its most crucial intelligence briefing. The decision to exclude the Book of Enoch from the canon was not just a theological footnote. It was a strategic choice with profound consequences. To understand the motive, we must understand the nature of institutional power. Institutions, whether religious or secular, thrive on order, clarity, and doctrines that can be easily taught and controlled. The testimony of Enoch is the antithesis of all three. Consider the truth it presents. It's a raw, unfiltered account of a cosmos teeming with rebellion, interdimensional conflict, and hybrid monstrosities. It doesn't offer neat theological boxes or simple moral lessons. It presents a gritty, terrifying reality where the lines between heaven and earth have been violently breached, and humanity is caught in the crossfire. This is not a comforting bedtime story. It is a battle report from the front lines of a spiritual war. For the early church councils, tasked with unifying a diverse and often persecuted faith, a narrative this wild posed a significant risk. How do you explain to a new convert in Rome or Corinth that their struggles with temptation are linked to the vengeful ghosts of half-angel giants? It's a far more complex message than Adam ate an apple. The story of Enoch resists simplification. It cannot be tamed and turned into an easy-to-digest sermon. And so, they, the gatekeepers, the ancient editors, the theologians who prized order above all else, made a choice. They chose the simpler story. They opted for a narrative that placed the burden of sin squarely and solely on human shoulders, a framework that was easier to manage, to preach, and to build a religion around. They effectively censored the cosmic context of our fall. By leaving Enoch's testimony in the apocryphal shadows, they weren't necessarily trying to deceive. They were trying to protect a simplified version of the truth they felt the world was ready for. But in doing so, they left future generations of spiritual archaeologists like us to rediscover the full, untamed, and terrifyingly magnificent scope of the real story. Do not make the mistake of thinking this is just a story about the past. The Book of Enoch is not a closed case file collecting dust in an archive. It is an active intelligence briefing, and the war it describes has never ended. The first apocalypse was not a final event. It was the establishment of a permanent enemy stronghold on this planet. Its echoes are not faint whispers. They are the deafening roar of our modern world. Consider the gifts of the Watchers. They have become the very pillars of our global civilization. The forbidden knowledge of weaponry taught by Azazel has evolved from bronze swords to hypersonic missiles. The vanity he instilled has morphed into a multi-billion-dollar beauty and fashion industry, powered by social media's relentless demand for a perfect, often false, appearance. The occult knowledge of enchantments and astrology has found new life in the New Age movement and the modern obsession with manifesting reality outside of divine will. The spirit of the Nephilim, that insatiable consuming hunger, is the driving force behind our consumerist culture, a system that devours planetary resources at an unsustainable rate. The lawlessness and corruption that drowned the ancient world are now streamed to us 24/7 through our news feeds. The tactics of the enemy have not changed. They have only been refined and scaled up. The disembodied evil spirits, the ghosts of the giants, continue their ancient mandate to afflict, to oppress, to drive humanity to despair and self-destruction. The chaos, the division, the mental anguish, the spiritual confusion that define our era are not random. They are the strategic operations of an invisible enemy, the lingering legacy of that first apocalypse. You are not just living in the aftermath of this war, you are living in the middle of it. The battlefield is all around you. Now, we return to the crime scene where this investigation began, the quiet, desperate chamber of the human heart. We return to the question that haunts you in the dark. Why can't I stop sinning? Having unsealed the testimony of Enoch, we can finally give the true answer. The reason your struggle feels like an unfair fight is because it is. You have been told you are wrestling only with your own flesh, your own internal desires. That is a half-truth, and a half-truth is the most effective kind of lie. The reality, as Enoch's dossier reveals, is that you are contending with forces far older, far more cunning, and far more malevolent than your own broken nature. You are fighting against the legacy of the Watchers. Every time you are tempted by vanity, violence, or the allure of power that circumvents God, you are hearing an echo of Azazel's ancient curriculum. You are fighting against the nature of the Nephilim. Every time you feel an insatiable hunger for more possessions, more validation, more stimulation, you are wrestling with the same consuming spirit that once devoured the world. And most directly, you are fighting against their ghosts. The whispers of despair, the sudden onslaughts of irrational anger, the waves of lust that seem to come from nowhere. These are not always your own thoughts. They are the tactical assaults of disembodied evil spirits, the demons whose origin we now understand. Their entire purpose is to amplify your every weakness and to convince you that their voice is your own. This knowledge is not an excuse. It does not absolve you of responsibility. It is something far more valuable. It is intelligence. It is the battlefield map you were never given. Knowing the real reason for your struggle means you can finally fight the real enemy. Your weakness is not the core of the problem. It is merely the battlefield where an ancient war is still being waged. And knowing you are on a battlefield changes everything. This declassified file does not offer easy answers. It doesn't promise a life free from struggle. Instead, it offers something far more potent: the truth. A truth that reframes your personal battle as a single front in a cosmic war of immense significance. The testimony of the Book of Enoch does not ask you to abandon your faith. It invites you to deepen it, to arm it with a more complete understanding of reality. The record has now been unsealed. The censored evidence has been presented, and it leaves you with a profound and personal choice. Life offers you two versions of this story. One is the official, sanitized version, edited for simplicity, safety, and control. It's a story that is true, but dangerously incomplete. The other version is the director's cut. It is wilder, darker, and infinitely more complex. It's filled with fallen angels, monstrous giants, and a war that began before time. It demands more from you. It demands that you see the world not as a playground, but as a battlefield. It demands that you recognize the true nature of the enemy. Which version will you choose to believe? Which reality will you choose to live in? The purpose of this investigation was not to give you all the answers. It was to give you the right questions and to show you where the missing evidence is buried. The power is now in your hands. You are no longer just a believer. You are a fellow archaeologist of the spirit, equipped to continue this excavation on your own. Join us in this investigation. Tell us in the comments below. Which piece of evidence from the Enoch file was the missing page that illuminated the most for you?